Hi everybody, I'm Alejandra with the Osceola Library System and welcome to Messy Media. Today I'm going to show you how to do some watercolor painting with the fun salt technique. So for this technique, we pretty much sprinkle salt onto our damp paint and it kind of separates the paint a little bit and creates this really fun effect. So I'm going to show you two different ways that we can use this technique. So I'm going to show you how to paint this sort of fun, colorful galaxy and then also this more fun, beachy type of scene. So that's what we're going to be working on today. So what you're going to need for this is some water and some watercolor paint. I'm using an Arteza, I believe that's the brand, Arteza set of watercolor paints. I just got these from Amazon, but you can get something like this at most craft stores. I'm using a sort of longer, thick brush since we're pretty much just going to be doing some abstract painting, so we don't need very small brushes. Of course, you'll need some salt. You can use any kind of salt. I have some fine sort of table salt here and some more coarse sea salt. But you can use, like I said, table salt, Epsom salts. All kind of salts will give different effects. So the bigger the rock is, the bigger the sort of effect is going to be. So I'll show you. We're going to use both the fine and the coarse so we can see what they look like. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and then I also have a gel pen that I've used to create some of these details on this painting. So that's optional. You don't have to have that, but if you wanted to put some little stars on your galaxy, you can use a white gel pen or maybe some white paint. So with that said, we can go ahead and get started. So that's the project a little bit closer. So you can see here around the edges is the effect here on my galaxy sort of painting. And then here you can see it on my ocean. And I did also put some here where the sort of sand is. So that creates a really fun look and you can use it in a lot of different ways. So I have here my watercolor paper taped off. I'm using the Strathmore watercolor paper. So you want to make sure you're using a heavy weight paper when you're working with watercolor so the paper doesn't pill. And the first thing I'm going to do is just dampen my area. Just wet it a little bit with no paint, just water. Just to help my paints kind of blend around a little bit more easily. And then we're going to work on both paintings on this same piece of paper. And then for my galaxy, I'm just going to start with a sort of brighter yellow. So I'm going to load my brush up there. And this can be pretty random. You don't have to go with my same color palette. You can do something less colorful. You can stick to blues and purples if you want something more traditional. I wanted something more colorful. So next, I'm going to go ahead and dip into this blue here, sort of a medium blue. And I'm just going to put that right next to the yellow. And I'm doing this pretty haphazardly, you know, no rhyme or reason. I think this sort of like random effect makes it look a little more sort of cloudy and galaxy-ish. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pick up this sort of medium orange color and put that in the bottom there. Okay, and if you do want, in general, when you're using watercolor, if you want a more diluted color, you would want more water, less paint. If you want something more bright, more true to color, you want more paint and less water. And then the bottom there, I think I'm going to take this light purple and a little bit more water. I don't want it to be super, super opaque. And I am sort of cleaning my brush in between the colors, just so it doesn't get too muddy. And since our paper is already a little wet, it is going to help sort of blend those colors there. Okay. So I'm just going to go in with a slightly damp brush and sort of blend it in a little bit. I might add a little bit of green there, I think. That would look nice. Add some green. There's really no wrong way to do this. It's just, you know, adding color where you want to add color. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Before it dries, I am going to add to this one my fine salt. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some in my hand. You don't need very much. And this is it's just some fine sea salt, but you can use table salt too. It's the same. Doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to sprinkle that all over the damp paint. Like I said, you want to make sure this is damp. If you sprinkle it on dry paint, it won't do very much. the effect kind of takes place as the paint is drying. So I'll leave that to dry and we can work on our next one. So for the next one, we're going to be doing our beachy scene. So again, I'm just going to wet the paper. I just have a brush with just water. And we just want the paper to be a little damp. And for this one, we're going to sort of do a gradient. So we're going to do from darkest to lightest. So for that, I'm going to take, again, sort of this medium blue to start. And you can, it's always better to start off light. And then if you think it's too light, you can darken it. It's not great to start off super dark because you can't take away. You can always add more, but you can't take away. So I'm just going to add a little bit more blue. I want it to be a little bit darker. And then as we go down, we'll want to add a little bit more water so we can have a less opaque color as we get to the bottom. So at this point, I'm not adding any more paint, just water. And you can see we're going from this sort of darker blue to essentially a very light blue. And then since I'm going to add the sand later, I'm not going to put too much blue there. And like I said, with this one, you can go back and add a little bit more if you want it to be a little bit darker. Or you can even add a darker blue, layer that on top. Okay. And this is a fun technique definitely to try with different types of salt. When I tried it with Epsom salt, since the chunks are a little bit bigger, it does look really interesting. Okay, so again, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to add to this one the coarse salt so we can see the difference. So again, I'm just using coarse sea salt. Pour it in your hand so you can have more control over where you're putting it. And we're adding this to our damp paint. You could also do a mix of both salt, coarse and fine salt, or table salt and sea salt, just to see what kind of effects it gives you. I'm going to keep adding salt until I'm more or less happy with it. And actually, I'm going to add some fine salt to this too, because I like what's happening here. So I want a little bit more of that. And we do want to let these dry as much as you can before we remove the salt so it has a chance to give that effect. I want to do a little bit more up at the top here where I really want that effect. So my paper is still a little bit damp, but what you want to do is let this dry and then take your hand or a tissue and sort of lift off the salt like that gently. Okay, so at this point, since my paper is damp, I can't really remove the salt. But once you get to that point, you're going to want to add some darker colors to the outside for your galaxy. So you're going to want to deepen it up and then add a little bit more salt here to give it more of that abstract sort of multi-dimensional look. And I also did that with here. I darkened up the edges a little bit and I added sand. Like I said, these aren't quite dry enough for me to take off the salt, but I do want to add some sand here. So for that, I'm going to go into this sort of medium brownish yellow color. And I didn't really put any salt down here, so I'm just going to go ahead and I have here more paint and less water. And just sort of add this sort of wavy pattern here to the sand. And you can definitely bring it up a little bit more if you want, or bring it down. Okay, I want it to be a little bit more opaque. Okay, so that's going to be the sandy part of my beach. I'm going to add a little bit more salt there to give the sand a little bit more texture. Okay, so at this point, like I said, you want to let this dry completely, gently wipe off the salt, and then go back and add another layer, add a little bit more salt, and then once this is dry, remove the salt again, and you can go in with your white gel pen or your white paint and add these little touches just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then again, once it's dry, you can remove the paint and to get these nice lines, or remove the tape, excuse me, to get your lines. And that's your finished product. And then for the ocean, I did add a few lines here with the white just to give it a little bit more, some more details. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today. Our next Messy Media is going to be Tuesday, October 12th, where I'm going to show you how to paint with alcohol ink. So please go to our website, osceolalibrary.org, for more information about our fun services and our programs. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.